G'day Bomber fans, how about that? That is 3 weekends in a row that have really tested the heart. We don't like to do them easy. It wasn't a convincing win in the slightest. A lot to really dislike about this performance, but a win is a win. 4 points locked up. That's also now our stretch of interstate games done. 5th on the ladder as well, which is good. There's a lot to take away from this game, good and bad. Get your votes in down below. Let's get into the Essendon vs West Coast review. So the match was a bit of a bore to start. That first term was a lot of Essendon dominance and not a lot of scoreboard action. We were all over them in the guts, really killing them, but 2 goals 5, some wasted opportunities. We really had the chance to punish them, but couldn't. We only led by 10 points and allowed them to get into the game. We did manage to hit the scoreboard more in the second quarter, ended up leading by 4 goals, kicked 5 for the quarter. The game really opened up. It was much more free-flowing than we saw in the first quarter, but we also saw the Eagles start their scoring. They came out firing, kicking the first 2 of the term. The third quarter was really worrying. I had the feeling we could start adding more goals to the tally, keep them out of touching distance, but that wasn't the case. They were hot. There was a bit of a boil over, and for a period of play, they were only a few points off until we kicked a few late goals to settle the nerves. The nerves wouldn't settle for long. The Eagles continued to fight. We were playing ourselves out of the game, wasting chances everywhere. We had it all but sealed at times, but they would just find their way back in the game, and after a late goal with about a minute left, us fans and the players faced a nervous wait for the siren, which luckily came before any more West Coast goals were kicked. We got the job done by 6 points in the end. So how did we win this very close and frustrating game of footy? Well, I think the main difference, just on face value for me, was our pressure generally being better than theirs, or a lot more overwhelming than theirs for most of the night. The tackle count wasn't even close. Our midfielders really did quite well to stem the flow of some of their better clearances, whether it's a nudge or a corral. We just put them under more pressure throughout the night, and for more regularly as well. I said in the preview that we could outrun them. They aren't a fit team, and although they did cover more distance than us, they were battling. A lot of them were cramping up late. The long, close game was clearly getting to them more than it was us. We were able to work harder, more efficiently, and for longer, and it started with pressure early that the whole team was buying into. 67 tackles to 45. I think that tells you all you need to know, especially because we had most of the ball on the night. Around the ground, we were also just a little bit better, and I did highlight this in the preview that if we were to win the game, it would be through our uncontested footy, and that's what we saw. They had their fair share of turnovers. We actually had quite a few more intercepts despite having far more of the ball. We outscored them 54 to 32 in scores from turnovers. It's the biggest differential of any scoring situation for the night. They actually outscored us from clearances, but I really felt more comfortable when we had ball in hand. You always felt a bad kick was coming when they had the ball in their D50, and that's why players like Martin and McGrath are so important. They do get their fair share of turnovers, to be fair, but last night, just a few between them. They were exiting really well, getting us important territory. We had about 15 more inside 50s, and a big reason for it is because of our cleanliness with ball in hand. I think also just the fact we are used to winning more than the team we were playing. I reckon if we were playing like that against Carlton or Melbourne or Geelong, we probably fall flat, but because we're playing a side who has been down the bottom a lot in the last few years, and even just our close game experience this season, we've won 3 by under a goal, had a draw as well. We're simply used to these situations more than West Coast, and that close game experience definitely came in handy late. We've been good in them lately. It doesn't matter how bad a side is playing throughout the game. If they don't have that end game edge, it doesn't matter. So for us to be playing poorly but get the job done, I think that's about all you can really ask for after what we dished up in the first 3 quarters. We could have lost that game, been embarrassed, but we managed to get the job done. It really wasn't pretty at all, but it's 4 points. I've been impressed with our backline lately, which is funny because I feel like it cops the most hate of any zone. You see comments everywhere with hate directed towards Kelly and Laverty, and even Heppel and McGrath at times, saying they cost us goals and they're leaky, but I can't remember the last time we had a stretch of games where our back 6 looked as solid as it does right now. In the last 4 games, the highest score we've conceded is 85 in that drawn Anzac Day game. We've been defending transitional footy a lot better, and that comes from our pressure up the ground as well. I think Mackay's been incredible, and those around him have been serviceable at least. Even Laverty had some shocking moments last night, but Saturday night, but I wouldn't say he was a liability. I feel like we have a few whipping boys for when things go wrong. Kelly, Laverty, Heppel, and yes, a few have had some bad games. In fact, some weren't at their best on Saturday, but they have been a big part of our defensive turnaround. Even just as depth, I think we should be appreciating them more. In saying that, I thought their forwards were really dynamic and powerful. It's a tough forward line to hold down. You got Mackay, who had Darling quiet for most of the night, which was just about a given, but Jake Waterman, this is a really hard forward to defend. You can't justify having Ben Mackay on him because of his work on ground level, but he's just far too strong on a lower tier key back. He used Kelly and Laverty at times to his advantage with his body, and he's been doing that in the last few weeks as well. He's up there in the Coleman for a reason. He's a great player. He was really dangerous. He should have had 4 or 5. I love watching him play, but he was frustrating, really getting the better of our defenders. Great attack on the ball as well, which makes it easier for their ground level forwards. We defended well, but I thought we were made to defend. It wasn't easy like it was against the Crows or the Dogs. You felt a bit more worried when the ball was in our D50 than you did for the games previously. I was very unimpressed by our maturity throughout the game. We gave away some horrible free kicks and 50-metre penalties, and not just the notable ones like the Goldstein 50 or the Durham downfield. There were a few times when we gave away possession when we really didn't need to at all, whether it's a high tackle when the ball is close to the boundary or a needless hold. I felt like the Heat was getting the better of us at times. There was a bit of feeling in the game, and to be fair, it was the same with them. They had some bad moments too. Both sides were really unprofessional, highlighted by Jamie Cripps reversing that free kick late in the game, which genuinely could have changed things. Who knows what would have happened if Waterman went back and kicked that goal. But both sides had brain fades, and not just from young players. Cripps is 32, Goldstein's 75, but both had moments that you would expect from rookies. And it's hard enough to get a win against teams when you're playing poorly, but when you're also allowing the emotions to get the better of you as well. And the issue is, it's not even new for us. We saw the same thing against Adelaide a few weeks ago when you have lapses in concentration, hot-headedness. We aren't talking about it much because we got the win in both those games, but if we'd gone down by a goal or even drawn the match, I think a huge fuss should have been made about that and our attitude in those games. I really hated that first quarter. I thought we were all over them, playing much better footy, but just not able to get anything going on the scoreboard. I think that's the term that really hurt us in the end. Young, poor teams like West Coast are not going to respond to adversity, and yes, they were getting soundly beaten with the stats and just general play, but they weren't facing any adversity on the scoreboard. They would have entered quarter time the happier team, knowing that they're playing poorly but only 10 points down, because then they came back and responded later in the game, started to even play up a bit, threaten on the scoreboard, which we weren't able to do early. It was really poor. The response after half-time as well from us. We're usually such a fast team to score, but we just couldn't against the Eagles. Early goals are gold in footy, and there is no way to put pressure on a team like a few early goals in a game. So for us to be kicking 2 goals in that first term despite having all the play, when that happened, I knew we were in for a long game. Now, it wasn't as bad as it's been in recent weeks, but we yet again allowed our opposition to gain momentum and hurt us on the scoreboard in a patch, and I'm really worried about this as we start to approach some tougher games, because next week's going to be brutal if we fall asleep again. GWS are a much better team than West Coast, so if we are allowing the Eagles to kick 4 out of 5 goals to start a quarter, it's going to get ugly against GWS. I think the only reason it's not more of a talking point is because we were playing no offense Eagles fans, a fairly poor team that didn't punish us, but against GWS, I think they would have gone on a roll and gotten out to a lead. Footy is too hard a sport to switch off for periods in. It doesn't matter if you're the better team for 90% of the game. If you allow your opponent a surge, it could be the difference between an easy win and a close loss. Luckily for us, they weren't good enough to really punish us while we were down. Some injury news: Caldwell pulled up sore. He had muscle tightness, and because we had a like-for-like sub, we brought on Ben Hobbs early. Caldwell may be alright to play GWS this week, apparently, and same with Draper. He should return into the team. Some returning players themselves. I thought Perkins was great. He had a huge impact from the limited touches. Guelphy is just such a reliable pressure forward, so hard at the ball, and just a handsome, beautiful specimen. I mean, you got to sit back and applaud him even when he stuffs up a regulation set shot. He's that good looking. But I think we are starting to get some players back, which is fantastic. We're getting closer to full fitness, not further from it. It's good to get wins and get through games unscathed for the most part. All in all, it is a win. It is hard to be happy about this win, but you can't really be sad about it either. I'm a bit worried though. You wonder how much energy we're going to have in these next few weeks after these tough, hard-fought games, and I think that's the difference between a good team and a great team. A good team gets the tough, close wins even when playing badly, but a great team rarely gets put in those positions. Nothing against West Coast. I was very impressed by their performance. They are a much improved team, but we were simply not good enough. I'm not trying to find problems and twist a win into a negative light, but we shouldn't be battling this hard in every game we play. I know it's an even competition, but I want to see more games like that one against the Dogs. I think that's the only easy win we've had all year, really. Even Hawthorn was only over in the last quarter. We have North and Richmond soon. I would love for one of those games to be a percentage booster, because right now we're sitting in 5th place on the ladder, but our percentage is bottom 6 or close to it. But we can't be too unhappy. We got the win away from home. We now only leave Melbourne once before our final game of the home and away season. Our tough start to the year is over. We're in a good position. Let's get onto the votes. One to Sam Durham, who was insane. His defensive work, specifically on Harley Reid at times. He made him look like a 4th round draftee, not the number 1 pick. He was all over him, and his cleanliness in contested situation was great. 2 to Nick Martin, who was yet again brilliant in defense. He must have had so many interceptions. He was everywhere back there and using the ball so well on the way back. But 3 votes to Zach Merritt. What a player this guy is. We're just so lucky to have him at our club. He is genuinely one of the very best players in the comp right now. That was another incredible captain's performance. I'd like to share the votes around and give some love to other players, but you just can't look past this guy sometimes. He should get maximum coaches votes for, what, the 3rd straight week or 4th, whatever it is. He's up there for the Brownlow as well. My role player is Mason Redmond. His stats look okay, 20 touches, 68 fantasy. People won't look at it much, but I thought his defensive game was really strong. Probably had his closest to his most impactful game of the season. He led the whole ground for interceptions. I think he was also up there for meters gained as well. And I haven't seen many talk about him after the game, so I have Redmond down as my role player. Some players unlucky to miss out on votes. I thought Parrish was incredible. I hope you get some votes from you. Dersmore was really good. Langford as well. I thought Mackay was strong again. That's about it for votes, though. Let me know what you think down below. That is all, though. We turn our attention to a massive game next Saturday, Essendon versus GWS at Marvel. I'm going to be there making the weekend trip over, so the boys better get the win for me. I'm currently at 66% for the year. I saw the Saints and the Crows victory. I unfortunately won't be able to forget that gather-round game that I had to sit through. So a win would bring us up to 80% for me, games attended, I think. I don't know, I can't do maths. Let me know if I've got that wrong. Leave your votes in, like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.